My sisters swapped my pregnant wife's medication because we didn't choose one of their names for our daughter, but now my mother says it's no big deal after sending her to the hospital. I'm a regular reader, but this is my first time posting. Let's get straight to the point. My wife and I are expecting our second child soon, and this is causing some issues with my family. The thing is, we announced our daughter's name at my sister's house, and now they are waging an emotional and social war over it. I'll explain more below. I come from a relatively conservative and very close-knit community, but from a family that has always followed traditions within that community. To start, my parents had me young, not as young as 16, but they were 19, which isn't much better when you're supposed to be in your first year of medical school. Even so, my parents made it work for a while. They got married, finished college, and then things stopped working. Well, they stopped trying to make it work. They divorced and married other people. My dad has been married to the same woman ever since, and I'm his only child. My mom, on the other hand, remarried, got divorced again, came out of the closet, and is now engaged to her lovely fiancée, Francine. During her second marriage, my mother had my sisters, Sully and Sandy. Yes, they are twins, and those names are made up for the sake of this post, obviously. Now, I love my sisters, I really do. There's an age gap, but with two absent parents between us, I've always tried to be there for them and make sure they had a dependable older brother to lean on when they needed it. Since I'm almost 10 years older than them, I've often played more of a father role than a brother over the years. I went to a state university not far from home, so I was around during their early teenage years, even for their first crushes, first dates, and first experiences with boyfriends. I even attended their father-daughter dances. All this to say, we've always had a good relationship. However, in recent years, something has strained that relationship, and that something is my dear wife, Harley. You see, Harley used to be my neighbor when I was a kid, and we played together almost every day until she moved away just before I started first grade. Well, in my first year of college, guess who I saw at the campus cafeteria? We hit it off almost immediately, and even though she graduated 2 years before I did, we stayed in touch. In my third year, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and 4 years ago, I asked her to marry me. We got married 3 years ago, and early last year, we welcomed our son Justin. Yes, obviously a fake name. We hadn't planned on having another child so soon, but we knew we wanted 2 kids and a small age gap between them. So when we found out she was pregnant again earlier this year, we didn't mind. Our families were excited. You see, my sisters adore Justin. He can do no wrong. He's the absolute apple of their eyes. Harley, on the other hand, can do plenty wrong, at least in their eyes. I've always been very selective about the people I introduce to my sisters because I always wanted to be a good example and influence on them. Maybe that backfired a bit, making them very protective over my partners. They've hated every one of my girlfriends over the years, and Harley is no exception. Like a saint, Harley said she understood they were being protective since I wasn't just their older brother, but also kind of a father figure. So she's never pressured them and has always been kind and patient. They behaved well enough during our wedding, especially considering the traditional ceremonies on my side that only involved my family. When Justin was born, I thought we had finally turned the page. They love Justin, so they would obviously love the woman who brought him into the world, right? Wrong. They still can't stand my wife. Harley has continued to be cordial and has allowed them to see Justin, but I think their behavior finally reached its limit. A few days ago, Harley and I hosted a dinner for her parents, my mom and her fiancé, and my sisters. We're planning to have a gender reveal in a few weeks since we don't need another baby shower, but we still want to celebrate our child with family and friends. But we wanted to do a small name reveal just for close family first. We tried to keep Justin's name a secret during the first pregnancy. But Harley's mother accidentally opened the banner we had made for the baby welcome and name reveal party, leading to a very emotional reaction a week before the party. This name reveal dinner was almost a nod to that. The name we chose for our daughter, whom no one knows is a girl yet, hence this temporary account, is just as meaningful, a continuation of Justin's name, and would probably cause the same emotional reaction from Harley's mother. Like me, Harley grew up with 2 younger brothers. While I had younger sisters, she had 2 brothers, Justin, 2 years younger than me, and Max, 3 years younger than Justin. Justin wasn't interested in playing with us when we were neighbors, and Max was just a newborn at the time, so I didn't see much of them. Unfortunately, a year before Harley and I reconnected, the 3 of them were in a car accident. Justin had just gotten his license, and Harley was visiting home, so the 3 of them went out to get a late-night snack. Harley was the only survivor. When her mother found out we named our son Justin in his honor, she was completely overwhelmed with emotion. Justin and Max's names had been family names for generations, and with them gone, her parents thought their names would die with them. Because of her reaction, we decided to tell Harley's father as well, who reacted similarly. My family found it touching, of course, but nothing compared to Harley's parents' reaction. We had always agreed to have 2 children, and we had always agreed on their names. In my culture, it's not common to name children after relatives, but in fact, my grandmother, my mother's mother, fought tooth and nail for my uncle to choose a different name for my cousin, as the one he initially chose was too similar to my deceased grandfather's name. But I always knew how important this was to Harley, so I didn't even have to think much about it. We had both the male and female versions ready, just like we did with Justina if he had been a girl. We weren't actually supposed to know the gender until the official reveal, but we were both too curious and found out beforehand. So now the reveal is more for our friends and family, and an excuse to have a party for little Maxim. Yes, that's the name. When we did the name reveal with our families, we told them both the male and female versions. As expected, Harley's parents were very emotional. There were tears almost immediately, but fortunately, they were mostly happy tears. My mom and Francine found the gesture very sweet, but they were more interested in knowing if we already knew the gender. However, Sully and Sandy were not happy, let me tell you. At first, I thought they were silent because they wanted to give Harley's parents space to express their emotions. Well, that misunderstanding was quickly cleared up when they excused themselves to go to the bathroom and didn't come back for 20 minutes. When they finally did, they immediately asked to speak with me outside. They told me they thought it was sweet that I named my child after Harley's brother, and they found it very touching that I cared so much for her younger sibling. They also mentioned that they were excited when they found out we were having another child because they thought it was their turn now. I don't know about you, but I didn't immediately understand what they meant, so I asked. Apparently, since I named my first child after Harley's brother, it was only fair to name the second one after my sister's. The fact that our second child was also named after one of Harley's brothers was proof of something they had believed for years. Apparently, Harley had been stealing my attention and poisoning me against them. This started when I spent my 3rd-year spring break on a trip with her and our friends, and since then, things had only gotten worse, or so they believe. Sully was crying at that point, and Sandy looked like she was about to do the same, so I decided to cut the conversation short. I was completely taken aback, and clearly they were reacting emotionally. I told them we weren't naming our children out of some false sense of favoritism. They were still here to carry on their names. Harley's brothers were not. The outside of the restaurant wasn't the right place to have this conversation, so I suggested we talk about it another day. For now, we should go back inside. We went back in after they touched up their makeup, but we decided to end the night early, and Harley and I went home. I talked to Harley about the issue, and her take is that they're feeling a little jealous and emotional, and we should give them some time. But almost immediately after the dinner, they contacted our cousins to seek support. By doing so, they not only revealed our baby's name, which we plan to announce publicly at the gender reveal, but they also managed to get several of our cousins to contact me, reproaching me for showing such blatant favoritism toward Harley's family. On one hand, I understand how this could have been hurtful. On the other hand, they have no right to demand that a child be named after them just because we named one after someone else. Are we supposed to keep having kids to name them after everyone who asks? I understand that this could be a sensitive topic for them, and I don't want to approach it in a way that causes more stress, but I want to address it before things get further out of control. I feel like they're on the verge of cyberbullying Harley, given the way our cousins have jumped on the bandwagon criticizing the issue. Obviously, I'm supporting my wife. I just want to know how to handle this without causing a big family fight, just a few weeks before my wife's due date. I would really appreciate some advice and suggestions here, so please tell me what to do. Update 1. I've never been someone who gets angry quickly, but right now, I'm furious. I'm sitting on the stairs typing this on my phone, hoping the act of writing will calm me down a bit. I just talked to my mom, who told me the reason why my pregnant wife has been in the hospital for the past 2 days is that my sisters thought it would be funny to switch her medication as a joke. I had to pause after writing that because it made me so mad just to see those words. My sisters decided that, since they were upset about not having the baby named after them, they were going to sneak into my wife's medicine cabinet and pull a little prank, which landed her in the hospital, vomiting, and barely able to stand the night of our gender reveal party. Well, here's a quick timeline of events so you can understand what happened, because I know I'm not being very clear right now. It's Monday night. Harley has just been discharged from the hospital after being admitted to the emergency room on Saturday night. Saturday afternoon was the day of Maxim's gender reveal. Even though my sisters had been using our family to harass us for not naming a child after them, Harley and I ultimately decided to let them attend. Because we had already made the place cards, and they had really calmed down a bit in the days leading up to the party. We thought they were just being emotional, and uninviting them would only fuel the fire and take attention away from the day when everyone inevitably asked about them. Surprisingly, everything was amazing. They behaved and spent most of the afternoon chatting with family or playing with Justin, or so we thought. Now I know they actually snuck away in the middle of the party, went into the master bedroom, and swapped out Harley's prenatal vitamins for another medication. I don't know if I'm going to get banned for saying this, but I'm not going to name the medication. However, it's a drug primarily used to help men who have performance issues in the bedroom. Apparently, it doesn't always affect women, but you can look up what typically happens. One thing that can happen, especially in pregnant women, includes nausea, visual disturbances, dizziness, diarrhea, neurological symptoms, and facial flushing, among other things. Of course, we had no idea what was causing all this when, around 9 p.m., after everyone had left and we had a late dinner in peace, Harley started vomiting and was so dizzy she couldn't even stand. So, I rushed her to the hospital, and no one could figure out what was causing the sudden onset of symptoms until my mom responded to my text, informing her that Harley was in the ER, with a message saying I should call her immediately. According to my mom, the moment she told my sisters that Harley was in the hospital, they started to get nervous. She interrogated them until she found out why, and that's how I learned what Harley had ingested and was able to inform her doctors. Thankfully, after the nausea and dizziness subsided, no new symptoms appeared, though they decided to keep Harley overnight for observation. They erred on the side of caution and ran a few more tests to make sure the baby was okay, so she was discharged today. She's currently asleep upstairs, recovering from the whole stressful situation, and we've thrown out all the prenatal vitamins that were in the pill organizer, the ones my sisters tampered with. I don't even know what to think right now. There's a line between disliking someone and jeopardizing their health and the life of their child just because you didn't like the name we chose for our baby. My sisters decided to cross that line, and I don't think this is something I can forgive. Update 2. As expected, given the content of my last update, Harley and I have decided to cut contact with my sisters for the foreseeable future. In the past, I've read about people on here cutting ties with family members, and I've seen it suggested in nearly every comment, and I thought it was a bit harsh and really impractical. It still feels impractical, but it's the only appropriate course of action left for me. And given what they did, I would dare say it's not even harsh enough. This isn't really a punishment, and I'm not filing a report against them for what they did. It's not something I want to put my pregnant wife through right now. All I'm doing is cutting off their access to the woman they've been subtly tormenting for years, while I turned a blind eye, oblivious. I don't care if family members are bombarding me with comments like, it wasn't their intention, or they've learned their lesson. They basically poisoned my wife as part of a prank, just to get back at her for something that wasn't even remotely an offense toward them. Apparently, they weren't even trying to switch her daily prenatal vitamins. They were attempting to switch her chronic pain medication, the pain medication she takes due to an injury she sustained in the car accident that took her brother's lives. She was only supposed to take the medication they switched after pregnancy, just to make her feel a little weird, but they swapped the wrong pills. I found all of this out through my mother, with whom I've still maintained contact, mainly because she's the one who discovered their stupid prank and immediately informed me. She's mostly accepted my decision to cut contact with my sisters, but as we get closer to the due date, I can feel her resolve crumbling. She's been dropping comments about how good they've been as aunts to Justin, how much they love him, and how they never intended to cause harm, let alone put a baby at risk. I've been shutting down all of these comments, but I know she's going to keep trying. A new problem is that I think she's found this account, or someone who has shown it to her. My concern is that this is just another way for my family to keep attacking Harley. On the other hand, maybe she just contacted Harley's mother, because she mentioned the medical checkup we have scheduled in a couple of days, something we've only told Harley's mother about. They've never talked much outside of greetings, but maybe they do now given everything that's been happening. Even though I just want to ignore this and focus on Harley in the final weeks of her pregnancy, this whole thing still has me a little intrigued. Update 3. Remember when I said I just wanted to ignore the fact that my mom knew about Harley's medical checkup, even though I never mentioned it? Remember when I thought she might have heard it from Harley's mother? Unfortunately, I can't say that anymore. I mentioned the conversation to Harley, and she found it strange. She decided to bring it up with her mother, and her mother told her that she hadn't spoken to my mom since the gender reveal. So now we have this mystery of how my mom found out. The mystery solved itself in just 2 days, when I opened Instagram to block my sisters, since they decided that me not responding to their texts was an invitation to DM me on Instagram. Well, the first thing in my feed was a photo of my aunt and her husband with my mom and her fiancé, with the caption, "Double date after work." Everyone was still in their work clothes, and Francine, my mom's fiancé, was included. You see, Francine is a nurse. Until a few months ago, she worked at a hospital on the other side of town. However, she was recently transferred to a new hospital and got a nice promotion. Until that moment, I hadn't bothered to pay attention to the name of the hospital where she worked. Her badge, which is front and center on her neck, is visible in the selfie in my aunt's Instagram post. That cleared it up. She works at the hospital Harley went to, the same hospital where her checkup took place. She works in a completely different department, but at the same hospital. I don't want to go around making accusations, especially ones as serious as what I'm implying. It's just hard to come to another conclusion when there's a mysterious leak of information. And the only two ways it could have been revealed are, Route A, Harley's mother, for some reason, contacted my mother, despite them never interacting outside of family events, and decided to tell her about Harley's checkup. Route B, my mom's fiancé, who knows my mom is very invested in Harley's pregnancy and also knows I've been talking to my mom less and less because she always tries to convince me to forgive my sisters every time we speak. Just happens to be a senior nurse at the same hospital Harley goes to. She decided to take a look at Harley's patient information and tell her fiancé. One situation is much more likely than the other. I don't want to jump to conclusions, I really don't, but I don't feel there's another explanation. In fact, it would make sense as to how my mom knew that Harley and the baby were fine, or even why she was so calm the whole weekend Harley was in the hospital, despite the fact that she's been very neurotic in the past when it comes to the health of her grandchildren. Update 4. I maintain that I'm not someone who jumps to conclusions quickly, nor am I someone who gets angry easily. To avoid continuing a made-up narrative, I decided to keep it simple. Talk to my mom. I considered asking for her fiancé to be present or even having Harley come with me, but I wanted to spare my pregnant wife from having to deal with the unnecessary drama of my family, and my mom is usually more honest when it's just the two of us. I went to her house for lunch while Francine was at work and my sisters were at school. My mom was working from home and was thrilled that I came, especially since I offered to bring food. It was fairly easy to start the conversation. She asked about Harley and the baby, and I asked if she was doing it because she wanted to know, or if she already knew the answer and was just being polite. She asked what I meant, and I mentioned the fact that she knew about Harley's checkup. She tried to say that I had probably mentioned it at some point, but I pointed out that we had only exchanged messages for a while before she brought up the checkup, and I never mentioned any checkup, let alone the date. Luckily for both of us, she didn't try any more excuses. When I asked her directly if Francine had told her, she admitted it. She said, yes, she did because that's what family does. They look out for each other and make sure everyone is okay. So, I asked if she didn't think that was an invasion of privacy, possibly even illegal. She told me I shouldn't make such a big deal about it because Francine wasn't looking into a stranger's records, but those of family. She added that Francine wouldn't have had to do that if I called more often and kept her in the loop. She then went on to talk about my sisters and how I had punished them for something that ultimately didn't cause harm. According to her, they had learned their lesson, and at this point, it was embarrassing for me to keep ignoring them. I did the only reasonable thing. I got up, went home, and talked to Harley. Here's what we did next. First, we called the hospital to file an official complaint against their employee, Francine. They assured us they could verify who accessed Harley's records, and they would keep us informed about the situation as soon as possible. Then, we sat down and meticulously drafted in great detail how my sisters had treated Harley since we started dating, culminating in the prank of swapping her pills. We posted it on Facebook, tagging every single cousin, aunt, and uncle who had been criticizing us for punishing my poor sisters and prioritizing my girlfriend. I don't know if Francine will be fired for violating my wife's privacy, but I do know that several family members have called to apologize, and the social status my sisters love so much is now crumbling beneath their feet. Update 5. Hello, it's me, the guy with the crazy sisters who hate his wife and basically poisoned her because we didn't name our baby after them. First, some positive news. I'm now the father of 2 beautiful and healthy children, Justin and my beloved daughter, Maxim. My beautiful wife is at the end of her maternity leave and is enjoying every moment with our daughter. Now, let's get to what you're really reading this update for, which is about a month overdue. Remember our little 2-step plan? Well, it worked out better or worse, depending on how you see it, than we ever could have imagined. Let's start with Francine, my mom's fiancée, well, ex-fiancée. You see, it was determined very quickly that she was the one who accessed Harley's records, and after some official proceedings, her nursing license was revoked. She was fired, and she was fined for her violation. After all that, she wasn't too excited about the idea of marrying the woman whose son had reported her. Before you start feeling sorry for my mom, she still stands by all her opinions, and now she's joined my sisters on the Harry is poisoning my mind ship, except now she's on that ship without a companion. Speaking of my sisters, remember that little Facebook post where I shared the full story with my relatives, whom they had been using as pawns in their games to harass my wife? Well, it ended up reaching a bit farther than expected. So far, in fact, that it somehow reached the dean of their university where both were studying nursing. It's safe to say they were expelled from the program, and while they're probably smart enough to get into another program, having that on their record isn't going to be good for either of them. Harley and I, however, are thriving as a family of 4. I may not be getting much sleep between diaper changes and late-night feedings, but I have a lot more peace than I ever had before. So, I guess that's it for my story. Important comment: you were there, and you ended up ruining the lives of not 1, not 2, but 4 women, all because of a prank that, in the end, was harmless. And a mother who was just taking care of her son and grandchild with all the resources available to her. I understand that you clarified what really happened to your family so they would stop attacking your wife. I really do. But to go as far as allowing this to reach the dean of their school and getting them expelled from what must have been a competitive program, that's just going too far. Cut them out of your life, never speak to them again, sure, but why do this? They had their whole future ahead of them, and then you ruin the career of a woman whose only crime was loving your mom, which I will never, ever understand. All of this is just hateful, and I don't wish any harm on your children, but I hope you have a wake-up call someday. Update 6. I know it's a bit late, but first of all, I want to thank everyone who supported me and said I did nothing wrong, especially in relation to that comment that got kind of popular in my last update. I'll use this space to respond to that person. First, regarding the Facebook post, I only made a post telling what happened, and if that reached the dean of my sister's university, it's not something I control. They exposed themselves with their behavior, and the post just clarified the facts. So I don't understand how it's supposed to be my fault that it affected them. People have the right to know the truth, and if that had consequences, it's not because I deliberately ruined their lives. I wasn't the one who sent it to the dean. As for Francine, my mother's fiancée, I wasn't the one who violated a patient's privacy. That's a very serious ethical and professional violation, and honestly, it was my duty as a husband and father to report it. Confidentiality in the medical field is sacred, and her decision to access Harley's records without consent is something I can't and shouldn't ignore. If that makes me the bad guy, as that person implied, then, well, maybe in their eyes I am. But I'd rather be the bad guy who stands up for his family than the good guy who lets a violation of rights go unpunished just because it was done by someone close to me. That said, I want to tell you something else I did, something I didn't reveal before because I wasn't sure if my mom or my sisters might be reading this space. Also, I had been waiting for my wife to recover from childbirth before making the final decision. The thing is, after a lot of thought and discussion with Harley, we decided to press formal charges against my sisters. What they did wasn't a simple prank, but an action that could have endangered my wife and our unborn daughter. I know some of you might think this is an extreme measure, but I couldn't just let what they did slide. What kind of message would I be sending if I didn't act legally in such a serious situation? Switching medications and playing with a pregnant woman's health is not a joke or a prank, it's a crime. But I also know many of you are wondering what happened after we pressed charges. Well, don't expect a major punishment or years in jail for my sisters, since fortunately there wasn't severe harm to my wife or daughter. In the end, they were found guilty of a minor offense, so the sentence was lighter. Both were fined $2,000 each in addition to community service. I'm sure the person who left that critical comment will be upset by this and will probably think I'm still causing harm to my poor sisters, who are already going through a lot. But I guess for that person, putting a pregnant woman's life and her baby's health at risk isn't that serious. Apparently, in their world, that's just a funny prank and not a serious issue that should be taken with all due responsibility. Fortunately, most of you have understood the gravity of the situation, so that's the final update I wanted to share with you.